After the destruction of World War II, victorious nations gathered to draft a new set of global rules. The objective was to prevent another massive conflict by ensuring borders were universally respected. This framework promoted specific norms on paper: open free trade, human rights, and the establishment of international institutions like the UN to oversee the system. Following the Cold War, this system became entirely dependent on the United States acting as a unipolar hegemon. Washington effectively served as a global policeman, providing the military power required to keep the rules in place. This period of stability relied on American dominance. Washington frequently set international law aside when convenient, invading Iraq without global consensus or holding suspects without trial, revealing that the rules-based order was often a useful fiction. To maintain its position, the U.S. built a staggering global military footprint. Experts count roughly 750 American bases scattered worldwide. This network serves three strategic goals: deterring Russia in Europe, checking China in East Asia, and staving off Iran. This creates a condition called strategic overextension. Even with its massive defense budget, the United States lacks the military assets required to fight major conflicts in all three of these regions simultaneously. Physical distance remains a hard limit. Recently, when the U.S. needed to respond to a crisis in the Persian Gulf, its closest available aircraft carrier took 10 full days to travel from the South China Sea. What looks like erratic foreign policy, insulting allies and tearing up treaties, is actually a strategy of triage. Washington is being forced to prioritize its resources because it can no longer afford to be everywhere at once. Washington is shifting how it treats its oldest allies. Instead of acting as a permanent security guarantor, the U.S. is adopting a purely transactional model where alliances are treated like business contracts. In Europe, the expectation is now clear. Nations must increase their own defense spending and handle the Russian threat locally, with minimal American support. A similar withdrawal is underway in the Middle East. Successive administrations have worked to extract U.S. forces from regional interventions, leaving Gulf allies to manage the threat from Iran on their own. Treating Europe and the Middle East as local problems allows the U.S. to stop bleeding resources. This frees up the military assets required for Washington's primary strategic objective. While pulling back globally, the U.S. is reasserting the 200-year-old Monroe Doctrine. This policy claims the Western Hemisphere as a zone of exclusive American dominance. After decades of focusing elsewhere, the U.S. is now aggressively pushing back against Russian and Chinese influence in Latin America to secure its strategic backyard. This regional posturing has become increasingly aggressive. We see it in the military buildups in the Caribbean used to pressure the government in Venezuela. This focus on the Americas is a classic maneuver to carve out a dedicated sphere of influence. Washington is securing local resources, from oil to rare earth minerals, while reducing its exposure to the rest of the world. All of this cost-cutting is in service of one goal: containing China. Beijing is the only power capable of legitimately challenging American global dominance. To slow China's rise, Washington is deploying economic warfare. It has abandoned long-standing free trade norms in favor of aggressive tariffs and trade restrictions. Meanwhile, the U.S. is quietly expanding its military infrastructure across the Indo-Pacific, moving assets closer to China and preparing to station nuclear submarines in Australia. Washington is concentrating its global military apparatus into a single focused vector. Every withdrawal from Europe or the Middle East is designed to point American strength directly at Beijing. This strategy comes with a significant diplomatic cost. The U.S. is now engaging with authoritarian leaders to reach pragmatic deals, a departure from its historical focus on democratic values. Transactional diplomacy emboldens adversaries. When the U.S. signals it will not defend the sovereignty of others unless it serves a specific interest, smaller, vulnerable nations are left exposed to aggression. This approach inflicts material damage on historical alliances. Partners like Canada and Europe are realizing they can no longer rely on American protection, leading to deep-seated anxiety and alienation. By trading its network of alliances for short-term gains, the U.S. is weakening its soft power. It is losing the global trust that once acted as its greatest strategic advantage. In response to the U.S. withdrawal, middle powers are hedging their bets. They are building new strategic relationships with other nations to ensure they aren't caught in the middle of a great power conflict. The central connections of the post-war system are fraying. As the U.S. retreats from global oversight, the world is reorganizing into a multipolar network where China, Russia, and the EU act as competing centers of power. This marks a shift away from shared international values. Instead, we are entering a period governed by raw military strength and economic leverage. The triage of the post-war order leaves the global system fragmented. As the U.S. stops calling the shots alone, nations must now navigate a landscape where raw power and local interests replace shared rules.